What if the Jedi Order discovered a young, Force-sensitive Palpatine before he was turned to the dark side by Darth Plagueis? We'll discuss that more on today's Star Wars Legends lore video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Thank you for joining me for another Star Wars Legends lore video. Today we're looking at the life of a young Emperor Palpatine, trying to figure out what would have happened had the Jedi Order found him before the Sith. Most of my thoughts on this subject are inspired by what may very well be my favorite Star Wars Legends book, Darth Plagueis. In that novel we learn about Plagueis, who is the master of Darth Sidious, and Palpatine's rise not only to Chancellor of the Republic, but also to one of the most powerful Sith Lords in history. We also learn that Palpatine didn't become a Sith until he was a young man, leaving, at least to me, the question of what would have happened had the Jedi discovered his Force potential while he was still very young. Given that in Plagueis we learn that his parents were somewhat aware of powers within Palpatine, he probably should have been reported to the Jedi. However, his family was very high ranking within Naboo society, so it's not surprising that he was not. I think there are two things that we need to consider in this video. The first is, had he been reported to the Jedi, would they have accepted him for training? We also then need to consider what would have happened had he been accepted or not accepted. So, would the Jedi have accepted a young Palpatine for training? Remember that the Jedi like to have their initiates be children or perhaps even infants. So we'll assume that Palpatine is very, very young when found by the Jedi. The thing about Palpatine / Sidious is this: he's had an incredible darkness in him since before he even became a Sith Lord. It was only through, as a child, learning to hide this power that he was able to function normally among Jedi and other Force-sensitive beings. Before his death, Palpatine's father reveals that this darkness and this power was sensed by the family even at his birth. We see this evil manifest itself in various ways throughout his life, even before being stoked by Darth Plagueis. As a young man, he kills 2 innocent pedestrians in his speeder and feels no remorse whatsoever about it. He planned to kill his father largely because he saw him as a rather impotent and incompetent man. Palpatine believed that he himself was a superior being and that he should have control over others. Again, this was all before he even started his Sith training. As a young man, we also see the incredible manifestation of his power. He's able to kill his entire family and their guards just through sheer force of will. Later, when Plagueis discovers the true nature of Palpatine, he says it was like the young man was born from the dark side of the Force itself. Returning to his birth, this is the same thing that Palpatine's family thought, that he was an animal at heart and filled with darkness, that he was birthed from something completely unnatural. His father even reveals that at various points throughout Palpatine's life, he considered murdering him. The point of all of this is that I think the Jedi would have recognized this immediately. Again, Palpatine didn't learn to mask the dark side within him until he was much older. The Council's recognition of the fear within Anakin was one of the reasons they didn't want to train him, despite him being presumably the chosen one. This would have been magnified by about 1,000 within Palpatine. Sensing this darkness, I think it's likely that the Jedi would have refused to train him. Rejected by the Jedi, I think Palpatine's life turns out basically the same way. Perhaps he would have grown up with a hatred for the Order, perhaps Hugo Damask, otherwise known as Darth Plagueis, would have discovered the young man sooner. But even with knowledge of his presence, I don't think the Jedi Order was competent to stop him from joining the dark side. The fact that there were Sith in the galaxy was unknown, their presence being clouded by the dark side of the Force. No one suspected Hugo Damask, and him interacting with Palpatine likely wouldn't have raised any red flags, given that they were both from influential families. It's also not like the Jedi would have killed the child or refused to return him to the Palpatine family. I really don't think that there's much that they could have done. I think too, once Palpatine discovered his power and learned to mask it, they would have probably forgot about him and lost interest. But what if the Jedi had agreed to train Palpatine? What if they took the young man on and he became a Jedi Knight, perhaps even a master? First of all, even from birth, I think Palpatine was totally evil. I don't think the Jedi would have ever extinguished the darkness within him. What's more likely is that, as he did with Plagueis, he would have misled his masters into thinking that he was working for them, while in reality, totally divining his own plans. This is especially true given the state of the galaxy during the waning years of the Republic. Even Jedi like Dooku, who likely didn't have any inherent darkness within them, left the Order because they thought the Republic was bloated and totally ineffective. Palpatine, who not only had this darkness in spades, but also a desire to lead and subjugate others to his will, would have likely eventually done the same. I think it's possible that he still would have been found by Plagueis, who we know tried to interact with Jedi as often as possible. One of the two likely would have sensed each other and the partnership may have formed. Perhaps the two would have been even stronger had this occurred. We know that the Sith don't mind when the Jedi train their apprentices first because it gives them some strength in the Force. We also know that the galaxy was looking for a divine ruler and that no Jedi had been Chancellor for quite a long time. Perhaps Palpatine could have leveraged this, quit the Jedi Order, and had a successful run for the Chancellorship without having to meddle with the Clone Wars. I think Sidious would take two options. Either he would leave the Order at a relatively young age, or he would try to effect change within, getting Jedi to splinter off and just weakening the whole from the inside. Staying on the inside would make it difficult for him to gain any real political power because I doubt the Jedi Order would let him run for Chancellor, but if he were still around by the time Anakin had entered training, he would have been able to influence him even more dramatically than he did in Revenge of the Sith. We know that Palpatine is a master of hiding his intentions, so the Jedi likely wouldn't have sensed any danger with him. Had he left the Order, I think his early Jedi training would have given him extra power. As I mentioned, I think he would have tried to parlay his experience with the Jedi into a run for a political position. The only problem here is that he would have had trouble interacting with Anakin because I think the Jedi would have been wary about allowing them to mingle. But I still think he has the advantage of being able to damage the Order from within and having more Jedi Masters like Dooku leave the Order and switch to either the dark side or just away from the Force in general. All in all, to summarize, my main point is that I don't think the darkness within Sidious could have been ever extinguished. It was something present in him from birth, and it seemed to dominate his entire persona. I think quite likely, sensing his power and his ambition, even as a child, the Jedi Order would have refused to train him. However, even if they had taken him into the Order, I think his ambitions never would have went away. We see in the Plagueis novel that Palpatine is capable of not only hiding his true intentions from the public, but even his master. Sidious used Plagueis, learning everything he could from the master while making the Muun believe that they were working together, in the end totally betraying him. I believe he would do something completely similar to the Jedi. He would either splinter the Order from within, causing Jedi like Count Dooku who are already disenfranchised to leave, or he would leave the Order after his training and try to parlay his experience into a position in politics. The most major difference would have been how he converted Anakin Skywalker. I think one interesting possibility is that by the time the Jedi discover Anakin, Palpatine is already a master on the Council and assumes direct control over Anakin as a Padawan. His conversion to the dark side then would be much easier. All in all, Palpatine would always be evil. I think it's likely that he would still meet Darth Plagueis, and by the end, I would be willing to bet that he would still have control of the galaxy. Those, however, are just my opinions. Do you think the Jedi would have been able to remove the evil from Palpatine? Am I overstating just how bad he was and how dark his heart was? Let me know all of that and anything else down in the comments. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. As always, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.